Grandma Suzie's Talk. Blessed are those. Part 1. The Blessing in the Simple Things. Hello, my dears. It's Suzie here. And I want to share something with you that has been close to my heart for many years. You know, when I was young, I never fully understood what Jesus meant when he spoke of the blessed. In those days, we were all chasing after things, seeking more possessions, more attention, more recognition. But as I've grown older, and life has unfolded with all its joys and sorrows, I've come to realize something deeply important. Blessings aren't always the grand things we expect. I remember one afternoon sitting on the porch with my sister, Carol, and my brother Dave. We were just kids, our feet dangling off the edge of the steps, swinging back and forth. The air was warm, and the sound of birds chirping filled the silence. Life felt so simple back then, so safe, so peaceful. We didn't have much, but we had each other, and that was more than enough. We laughed, we argued, but we always ended up with our hearts full of love. It was in those moments of simplicity that I first started to understand the words Jesus spoke in Matthew 5, where he said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." What did he mean by that? At first, I thought he was talking about being poor materially, that is. But as I grew older, I realized something profound. Jesus was speaking of those who approach life with humility and an open heart. It's not the things we accumulate in this life that matter most. It's the love we share, the relationships we build, and the peace we find in the small moments. It's funny, isn't it? How we often think that we'll be happy when we have more. More money, more success, more stuff. But every time I tried to fill that emptiness, I only found more longing. The real blessing, I learned, is in recognizing the abundance that already exists in the simple things. Part 2. The Blessing in Loss and Suffering. Now I've seen my fair share of hard times, my dears. Life has a way of teaching you lessons through heartache, doesn't it? I think back to the time when I lost my first love, Tom, my husband. Oh, how my heart ached. We had spent so many beautiful years together, raising children, building a home, and dreaming about the future. But the day he passed away, all those dreams faded, and I felt a profound emptiness. I'll be honest, I didn't know how I would go on. The house felt too big without him. The silence was deafening. But in that silence, I began to hear the voice of God speaking to me in a way I had never heard before. It was in the stillness of grief that I truly began to understand the blessing in suffering. Jesus said, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." I thought, how can mourning be a blessing? How can pain lead to anything good? But as I walked through the days of sadness, I began to see that the grief was not something to be avoided or feared. It was in my mourning that I found a deeper connection to others who were hurting, and I found that I could be a source of comfort for them too. Through my pain, I learned empathy, I learned compassion, and I learned to embrace the healing power of love. The blessing wasn't in the loss, but in the way that God used it to shape me. My pain became a bridge to others' hearts. And in a way, I realized I had been blessed with a deeper understanding of what it means to love and to be loved. To mourn is not to be weak. It's to open your heart to others, to acknowledge your humanity, and to allow God's grace to heal you. Part 3: Blessed are the meek. I often think of my old friend Maria, who taught me a great deal about humility and meekness. Maria was not a loud woman, not one who sought attention or praise. She had a quiet strength about her, the kind of strength that only comes from walking closely with God. I remember how, whenever someone in the neighborhood needed help, Maria was the first one there, bringing food, offering a listening ear, lending a hand. It didn't matter if she was tired or had 100 things on her plate. She always found time for others. One day I asked her, "Maria, how do you do it all? How do you serve others without ever seeking anything for yourself?" She smiled and said, "Susie, the blessing comes in the giving, not the receiving. When you serve others with a humble heart, you are blessed with something greater than anything money can buy." I've never forgotten that conversation. Maria lived out the words of Jesus when he said, "Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth." The world often tells us that we need to be powerful, to be noticed, to assert ourselves. But Jesus was saying that those who humble themselves, those who serve others with a gentle and kind heart, are the ones who truly receive the greatest blessings. It's in the act of giving without expectation, of showing love without needing anything in return, that we find the truest form of happiness. Part 4: The blessing in peacemaking. I want to share a little story about my grandchildren Emma and Jake. They're at that age where they argue over everything. If one wants to play with a toy, the other wants it too. It's a constant back and forth, and sometimes, as you can imagine, it gets loud. But you know what I've noticed? After every disagreement, they're quick to reconcile. They'll argue and fuss, but then they'll come together, hug, and say they're sorry. I remember once when they were arguing over a game, I sat them down and said, "Do you remember the words of Jesus? He said, 'Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God.'" I explained to them that being a peacemaker doesn't mean avoiding conflict at all costs. It means having the courage to step in and mend what's broken. It means saying you're sorry, forgiving the other person, and choosing love over pride. It's such a simple lesson, but it's one that carries profound power. Jesus calls us to be peacemakers in a world that often values division and conflict. The real blessing is found not in the fight, but in the willingness to reconcile, to forgive, and to bring healing where there is hurt. When we choose peace over anger, we carry a little piece of heaven with us. Part 5: The blessing in being poor in spirit. Finally, I want to talk about being poor in spirit. When I was younger, I didn't quite grasp the meaning of this. I thought it meant being spiritually weak or lacking in faith. But over the years, I've come to understand that being poor in spirit doesn't mean being weak. It means recognizing our dependence on God, acknowledging that we are not self-sufficient, and surrendering our hearts to His will. When we come to God with humility, acknowledging our brokenness, we open ourselves to receive His grace. It's when we let go of our pride and self-reliance that we make room for God to work in our lives. Jesus said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." It's not the proud or the self-sufficient who experience the fullness of God's kingdom. It's those who recognize their need for Him, who come to Him with open hearts and humble spirits. In my life, I've often found that the times when I was most poor in spirit were the times when I experienced the greatest blessings. It was in my vulnerability that I discovered the depth of God's love and mercy. And it is in that same vulnerability that I have found peace and joy, even in the most difficult seasons of life. Part 6. The Blessing in Every Day. As I look back on my life, I see that the blessings were not found in the big moments or the grand achievements. They were found in the small everyday moments, sitting with family, sharing a laugh, offering a kind word to a stranger, or taking time to appreciate the beauty of a sunrise. These are the blessings that Jesus was talking about when He said, "Blessed are those." To live blessed is not to live without struggle or hardship. It's to live with a heart that remains open to love, to grace, to forgiveness, and to peace. It's about finding God in the everyday, in the simple moments, and in the quiet times of reflection. It's about realizing that no matter what we face in this world, we are blessed because we are loved by a Creator who sees us, who knows us, and who walks with us every step of the way. So, my dears, I leave you with this. Seek the blessings in your everyday life. Look for them in the quiet moments, in the acts of kindness, in the love you give and receive. Life isn't about chasing after more or rushing through the days. It's about living fully in the present, embracing the blessings that already surround you. As you walk through life, remember that you are truly blessed. Not because of what you have or what you've done, but because you are deeply loved by the one who calls you His own. And that, my dear ones, is the greatest blessing of all. Thank you, my dears, for spending this time with me. Remember, life's journey is better when we walk it together. If these stories and reflections warmed your heart, be sure to subscribe and join me for more wisdom, comfort, and a little sprinkle of joy. Together, let's keep growing one story at a time. Until next time, stay safe, stay hopeful, and remember, you're never alone. Grandma loves you.